It begins with a puzzle that seems to defy logic. A person walks into a police station and confesses to a crime they did not commit. There is no coercion, no pressure, just a statement. This is a voluntary false confession. Often, it stems from a pathological need for attention or an inability to distinguish fantasy from reality. In high-profile cases, dozens of people might come forward, drawn to the gravity of the event, wanting to be part of the story, even as its villain. But most false confessions aren't given freely. They are extracted. Picture a small, featureless room. The goal of the person confessing is not to admit guilt, but simply to make the interrogation stop. This is a coerced, compliant confession. It's a rational, if short-sighted, decision made under extreme duress. The suspect weighs the immediate, unbearable stress of the interrogation against the distant, abstract consequence of a trial. They confess to go home, to sleep, believing the truth will eventually surface. Then there is the most unsettling category: the coerced, internalized confession. Here, the innocent suspect not only confesses, but comes to believe they are actually guilty. Their own memory becomes a foreign country. They develop a profound distrust of their own mind, and through a process of intense suggestion, they begin to construct false memories of the crime. They might even provide details, filling in gaps with logic and imagination, creating a narrative of guilt where none existed. How does a mind break so completely? The architecture for this mental collapse often follows a blueprint developed in the 1940s, the Reed technique. It operates on a foundational assumption that is never stated aloud. The suspect is already considered guilty. The 9 steps of the technique are not designed to find truth, but to secure a confession. It begins with direct confrontation. The interrogator presents the accusation as an established fact. Any denial is not seen as a proclamation of innocence, but as confirmation of deceit, further justifying the interrogation's intensity. The environment itself is a tool. The suspect is isolated, cut off from any social support or external validation of their reality. Interrogators will control everything: the time, the temperature, access to a bathroom. This dependency creates a state of learned helplessness. They are told repeatedly that denial is futile, that evidence against them is overwhelming, even if that evidence is entirely fabricated. The psychological goal is to make the act of confessing seem like the only possible escape from an impossible situation. 2 core tactics are at play: maximization and minimization. Maximization is the sledgehammer. The interrogator exaggerates the evidence and the severity of the legal consequences. They might shout, invade personal space, and imply a long, harsh prison sentence. But studies show a far more effective tool is minimization. This is the velvet glove. Here, the interrogator downplays the moral and legal severity of the crime. They offer sympathy, justification, and an implicit promise of leniency. Why is minimization so potent? It works because it offers the suspect a way to confess while preserving some sense of self-worth. The interrogator might say, "Look, anyone would have done this in your situation," or "It was a mistake, not a malicious act." This reframes the confession not as an admission of being a bad person, but as an understandable human error. Research has found that minimization tactics are 4 times more likely to elicit a false confession than maximization. It's an offer of a psychological exit ramp. This psychological process isn't a rare glitch in the system. When researchers survey prison populations, the numbers are disturbingly consistent. Studies across different countries, from the United States and Canada to the United Kingdom and Iceland, reveal a stark reality. Between 20 and 33% of inmates report having made a false confession at some point in their lives. Roughly 1 in every 4 or 5 people behind bars claims to have confessed to something they didn't do. This suggests the mechanisms of interrogation are universally effective at producing a desired, but not necessarily true, result. To understand how someone can come to believe a lie, we have to look at the brain itself, specifically when it's deprived of sleep. Many interrogations are marathon sessions, lasting hours or even days. Sleep deprivation systematically shuts down the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain responsible for executive functions, complex planning, decision-making, and, critically, reality testing. As the prefrontal cortex goes offline, suggestibility skyrockets. The brain becomes less capable of scrutinizing incoming information and more likely to accept it as true. A weary, suggestible brain is fertile ground for planting false memories. This isn't science fiction. It's a documented psychological phenomenon. In classic experiments, like the Lost in the Mall study, researchers could convince subjects they had a detailed memory of being lost as a child, an event that never happened. Interrogators do this by introducing false evidence, a faked witness statement, a doctored lab report. They might ask leading questions like, "Did you have the gun in your right hand or your left?" The suspect's brain, struggling to make sense of the situation, might begin to generate an image to answer the question, and that image can eventually feel like a memory. Once a small detail is implanted, a cognitive bias takes over. Confirmation bias is our tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. As the suspect starts to consider their own guilt, their brain actively searches for evidence that supports it while ignoring contradictions. They might recall being near the crime scene, and this innocent fact is now recontextualized as damning. The interrogator's narrative provides a script, and the suspect's own mind becomes the co-author, turning fiction into a biographical event. Ultimately, a confession obtained this way is not a moment of truth revealed. It's the end product of a psychological construction. It's a story built by pressure, exhaustion, and the fundamental malleability of human memory. The very system designed to uncover facts can become a factory for producing fictions so powerful that even their authors come to believe them. The question is not just, why do innocent people confess, but rather, how fragile is the boundary between what we remember and what we are told? Monotony has grown fast. Nearly 2,700 people have watched in the last few weeks, yet less than 0.03% are subscribed. It would mean a lot if you joined by hitting subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.